Hi, and welcome to the Researching Greatness podcast. This is John with co-hosts Brian and Joe, and our guest of the day, Victoria from Defense Unicorns. We'll be diving into the story of Defense Unicorns and Victoria's background and the path to greatness on this episode. Thank you for joining us. Make sure you hit the like and subscribe button. And Victoria, if you want to kick it off today with a little bit about your background and what work Defense Unicorns is doing in the space.
Sure. Where to start? I can take it as far back as like my time in active duty to how I got here, if that works for you.
Yeah, that would be great.
So fun fact, I actually joined the military because it was part of my rebellious teenage years. I wanted, yeah, I know. I throw that out there. I have no military in my family at all whatsoever. Decided to do it because prior to joining, all I had ever done was ballet. My whole family assumed I was going to do ballet for my career. And I took a step back and I thought, am I doing ballet because that's all I've ever done? Or am I doing it because I'm passionate about it? And so did a hard pivot and said, you know what, I'm going to join the military instead and see how I like this. And ended up how I got into the Air Force, which I know is unconventional. But really how I got started was I went to the Air Force Academy, graduated, decided to do acquisitions. Mainly because I will never forget when I was going around trying to figure out what I wanted to do in the Air Force. I had asked a couple people and I said, I see this like contracting role and this acquisition role. Like, what is it? What is it like? And the individual, I can't remember this name, but made a huge impact on my life, said it's like online shopping for the military. I was like, oh, easy. I can do that. Like, no problem. Lesson learned, it's not like online shopping at all.
Yeah, I was like, that's not something I would have said.
But you know what? He's the reason why I got into contracting in the first place. So all that being said, I did operational contracting overseas at Lake and Heath, transitioned over to Handsome Air Force Base where I did like major weapon systems contracting, got involved in kind of like the general PM side of the house. Was fortunate enough to get exposed to things outside of the contracting career field, which is a whole other story, but got introduced to this DevSecOps space, this DevSecOps initiative. Loved everything that we were doing from a DevSecOps perspective within the DoD, that I wanted to continue doing that. But in traditional Air Force career fashion, you know, they looked at me and said that you love what you're doing too much, right? We're going to go put you in a role to satisfy a checkbox that you're not really interested in. And I decided that was it for me and ended up leaving and came and joined Defense Unicorns with a bunch of folks that I was fortunate enough to serve active duty with. So yeah, now I'm over at Defense Unicorns, over kind of on the growth side. Growth side of the house, I love to explain it's like a small word for a lot of things at the company. It's really that end-to-end mission hero journey or customer journey flow. So anything from like that initial engagement, whether it's LinkedIn or social media or an event or a conference, to, you know, that first phone call and building relationships and building credibility within the ecosystem, doing discovery framings, proof of concepts, all the way through like pricing strategy and negotiations and actually getting on contract to support our mission heroes. So end-to-end mission hero journey flow, kind of capture all of that at Defense Unicorns.
So for someone listening that's never heard of Defense Unicorns, what's the 30-second elevator pitch or overview of who they are, what they do, why they're doing what they do?
Yeah. So I like to confuse people. Sometimes I say it's a toy company, it's a t-shirt company. Because you see Doug, our mascot, and it throws people off. But and I can get into that later. But Defense Unicorns, honestly, it's a team of individuals that are super passionate about the DoD mission, and I genuinely mean that. We come from various backgrounds, but what brings us together is that we deeply care about being there and serving the mission. Ultimately, what do we want to do? We want to enable the delivery of secure software to the national security mission set, right? That's what we're here for. A lot of us are here because we've lived that pain when we were on the active duty side of the house. Like, we know how painful it is. And we know that it like not only is so much better, like on the commercial side, but that it needs to be so much better for our national security mission set. So it is our goal to fix the actual problem of how we deliver software at scale. Right? You see a lot of goodness throughout the DoD in little pockets, but nothing has scaled beyond those little pockets. How do we make it the norm to just deliver really good software to the people that need it the most?
Huge challenge that's really y'all are taking on. And yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Sorry.
Yeah, it's a huge challenge, and like absolutely everybody agrees with you. That's 100% needed. But what an interesting switch from like to be rebellious to go into military. And so you had something you were very passionate about, and then you just kind of tried something new, but you stuck with it. So did you like find a new passion in what you were doing, or did you find that your passion was just getting it, a problem and doing it well, or?
That's a great question. I think I found a new passion, right? I think what I love most is, it's going to sound super cliche, but being able to have an impact. So when I look back at my time throughout the Air Force, like the roles I love the most are when I was actually able to create the biggest impact. And that's why, like, sending me to a staff position, I was like, what impact am I going to have here reviewing documents? Like, I want to be actually testing the bounds and limits. And that's why at Defense Unicorns, like, that's why I came here, right? Like, it's all the impact that we believe we can have. So yeah, I think probably also pride as well. Like, I made such a large pivot in my life as I am going to figure this out and I'm going to like it. Like,
Right.
I can't give up now type of thing.
And now here you are a decade later, and
Now, it's crazy how that happens. It was always like, I'm going to do 5 years. 5 years turns into 7. 7 years turns into 10. I was like, okay, I really need to decide if this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
Right.
It's the 10-year mark, right? You got to make a decision. Yeah.
And it was my 10-year mark. I got out right at my 10-year mark. So
yeah. Did ballet ever help you in the military?
It did. Ballet has a lot of discipline, right? Over your mind and your body. That discipline translates across a lot of things that you do. You have to be able to focus. You have to be able to pick things up quickly. So, like, there's a lot of translation to things that you do in ballet to the military. But I know, crazy. My family still brings that up. They were ironically asking me not to go into the military. They said, please don't. And I always hold this against them because 6 years later, my brother came along and they're looking at him saying, hey, you know what? You should really consider one of the military academies. I think it'd be great for you. So
did he join?
Trend.
He did. He went Coast Guard. So different.
Oh, cool. Yeah.
It's not as good as the Air Force, but it's okay.
I know. It's okay. He tries.
Did you pick up golf while you were in the Air Force?
No. I did not pick up golf. And ironically, I've never had any desire to fly. That's the first question I always get. Like, are you a pilot? Nope, I am far from a pilot.
Was
the joke for the Air Force was you learn to play golf and then you build runways in the Air Force, right? So I think that the contracting history you have there, it's a black box probably for a lot of our listeners. And a lot of our listeners are government contractors, defense technology, very interested in what happens in this space. What can you share about what being a contracts officer in government is like, and especially now that you're out as a contractor, reflecting back in that position?
Yes. So honestly, I wish that just about anyone in an acquisition, PM, contracting type role actually spend time in industry before doing their job. I think it brings a great perspective. I look at some of the things I used to do when I was a contracting officer, and if I could throw something at my former self, like, I would. And I say all of that because it highlights, like, the process for acquisitions and contracting is very difficult to navigate. There's a whole career field and how you navigate that and and what you do, and it's not very transparent at all, right? You mentioned it as a black box, right? They tend to be off in their own little world. They have their own rules and regulations, their own reporting, their own processes, and it's not transparent. And it's the reason why, actually, towards the tail end of my career, when we got involved in this DevSecOps initiative, one of the things that excited me the most is that there are a lot of DevSecOps principles that should be applied to the acquisition process, right? Oftentimes we spend 18 months trying to come up with a strategy and we want it to be perfect. And then by the time we get there, we iterate and change and it's completely wrong. So how do we get out something that's just good enough and iterate on that strategy and be flexible enough to move quickly based on the feedback that we're getting? So that was a lot of the driver of what we were trying to do back in Platform 1 and even Kessler Run. How do we do something that is shorter, that we can learn from and move on quickly from? So I share all of that because biggest thing for industry trying to navigate, it's hard. I know it's hard. Don't give up, right? It is a process. There are ways that you can kind of buy down the risk of that acquisition process from the industry perspective. There are programs that are out there. There are things that you can apply for set asides. And I think just understanding the overarching like journey allows you to pinpoint like where's what are the strategies and processes that you can kind of get in to make it easier on you. And I can kind of talk through like defense unicorns, what we typically do. We have the SBIR program, which has been phenomenal for us in just getting started. We use the SBIR program not just from like an acquisition authority perspective to allow people to come support us directly. We use it from a just like buy down the timeline. A lot of program offices don't have money. They're waiting for money. Why not leverage an SBIR program to kind of buy down on that timeline, right? You may not have funding now, but let's try out a proof of concept with SBIR. It's another pot of funding that's not tied to the program offices. It's a great way to get started now type of thing. How do you do things like discovery and framing that actually help you scope out what the requirement is and build that credibility and relationship with these end users? So not only do they have confidence in what you're doing, but you have a clear and mutual understanding of what the requirement is you're actually trying to solve. So once you are on contract's good, right? You're actually doing something that solves a problem that they need to solve versus them guessing at what they think they need and then it being wrong once they actually get on contract. So I know that was a lot. Hopefully that covered a little bit of everything.
No, I think that's a really interesting or really great answer. Looking at Defense Unicorns, you guys have a ton of open source. Mm-hmm. Is that an artifact of doing so many SBIRs? Like I see it as a kind of a way potentially of like, hey, we're going to put in this work so that you can see what we're going to do, so you feel more comfortable about giving us a contract. Like, is that how it kind of turned out, or is it just we are fans of open source, this is part of our culture?
So the latter for sure. Like, we are fully dedicated to open source. We intend to donate all of our open source projects, right? We are committed to open source. To your earlier point, we are open source because think about the scale and impact we want to have, right? We're not going to do that with proprietary solutions, right? We also don't think it's right to do that to the warfighters, to be like, hey, we're going to give you the solution that solves your problem, but you're stuck to us forever. Like, we believe that we're the best at what we do regardless. So our hope is if we're not the best, then you shouldn't work with us type of thing. So we do open source because of the scale and impact we want to have, the scale and impact we want to push. We want to optimize it on our end as well. We also just don't believe that it's fair to the end users to lock you in. Like, it's your data. You should have that data independence. You should be able to move as you need to serve your mission.
So there's lock-in. There's also that open sourcing to the public is a different strategy than I've seen elsewhere, right? There are plenty of contractors that give the IP to the government, and the government can do whatever it wants. And internally, they can modify it, etc. But that putting it out is, I think, Defense Unicorns is the premier contractor that actually does that, right? That it's the only one that really puts its money where its mouth is. And you have 235 repositories. So I think my biggest question is how do you make money with that kind of and I'm asking this with great respect for what you do, right? But what is the actual monetary gain? Do you and I'll stop there, and because I have a bunch of follow-ups. But yeah, how do you do it?
It's like, surprisingly, not surprisingly, maybe not. Maybe people think we get this question a lot. We get it all the time, right? How do you guys actually make money? How are you an actual business? What we do is support, right? We provide support around our open source capabilities. So in reality, think of like, come in, we get something up and running in your environment, right? And then we provide almost like an SLA of support around that capability. So you could continue asking us for support. You could find someone else to do it. Like, you could do it yourself. But I go back to my previous point, like, these are things that we're building and maintaining. We are super passionate about what we do, and we hope that we're the best at what we do, right? And that support model, that is really what we do. We're here to help type of thing, but we want the technology just to be the standard across all of these national security mission sets.
What do you think is the percentage of open source work versus internal work that you either keep for a customer or keep for yourselves.
Make sure I'm understanding. So what do we build specific to a customer versus just open source?
Yeah, like ratio of work, closed to open.
Everything's open source that we do.
So everything's open source, but you do work in classified environments. So there are ostensibly like repositories and or internal repositories. So it's not, but you still call that, or are you still labeling that open source?
Everything we do leverages open source technologies, right? So we're not providing any type of like proprietary solution for a specific government program office, right? We can not paywall, we can close things off, right? Or you're talking about classified, like those are specific environments that are specific to their mission sets, but the technologies and everything we build and pull from are all open source. So there's nothing that would prevent that program office from using it and doing it themselves.
It's really impressive.
So you've gone from contracting office to you're now on the contractor side, and you said there's a lot of things that you would have loved to have learned early on in your career. Like, what were some of those things and like as a contractor, can we gently help our contracting officer understand some of these things?
Yeah. Where to start with that one? I remember the expectations I had of industry, right? I remember the expectation I had of industry, right? There's a push on the DoD. Hey, we want small businesses. We want new technology. We want to get startups actually into the DoD space. That sounds great, but those words aren't represented in the actual actions and things that they're asking for, right? A 20-page technical volume, yeah, that's easy to ask for until you have to actually write it, right? And you're like, how in the world
Right.
am I going to put 20 pages worth of stuff in? And oftentimes, if you're looking at a startup, you're probably looking at the founder that's writing it. Like it's all hands on deck.
Nights and weekends. It's
it's insane. It's like it's asking a lot of these really small companies that are doing everything they can to get by. A lot of these startups, including ourselves, don't have a proposal writing shop. So we don't have just a team that we ship proposals to and say, hey, can you just write this? So like looking back at that, like those simple like requests that you're making or all of these additional documents that you have to fill out, because it's mostly never just a technical volume. It's like, hey, do this and provide past performance and these 10 other documents that maybe someone will look at, who knows, but it's more that compliance that they do to weed out. And that's got it. But if you really, really want to get and access these new companies with new technologies, that's not the way to do it. And even this like transparency, when you're looking at these small companies who are like, yep, hey, I have made great movement with the program office. I'm really excited for this requirement to come down. They told me I'm going to get the RFP in 2 weeks, right? A lot of companies are looking at that timeline, that they're planning everything out. But when they think they can get the RFP, when they have to respond, and it's all part of their like pipeline and cash flow. And then you spend a month, that throws a huge curveball to people. Right. And then you don't tell them when they can expect an update. Like that lack of transparency is really hard to manage when you're on the industry side of the house, because we're not, especially small businesses, you're not the big primes where you just have this massive portfolio that you can rely on. Sometimes you're really looking for that next contract to get you over the next hurdle. So little things like that transparency and kind of taking for granted what it means to have a schedule slip on the industry side. And then just the requests that you're asking for. I think that would be my start of my long.
I would completely agree with all of those points.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, as industry, that's definitely one that frustrates me the most is the acquisition forecasts that come out and say, hey, this is coming out. They might give a specific month, or they may be very vague and say, a specific quarter of the year. And that month comes and goes, that quarter comes and goes. And it'll be 6 months later before they even give you an update as to why they didn't put it out. And to your point, we've been banking on that. We had a team lined up to write it. We spent money on BNP or on overhead preparing for it, and then it slides way out, changes completely, becomes extremely frustrating. So I'll echo that one. Yeah,
even the evaluation process itself, right? Like you're trying to write down what you think you have this great solution. Like I have this great idea and I'm going to try to write it into words. And you're hoping that someone on the other side is understanding what you put down on paper. And then you look at things like oral presentations and how we manage oral presentations on the government and industry side. Like, we haven't cracked the nut in terms of actually finding really good companies with really good ideas, how to access them and make it easier for them to do work with the government. We made lots of progress. And I say we, like, I'm still on the DoD.
Sure.
A lot of progress has been made because I'm passionate about this, right? Like, it's a huge pain point. It's something that needs to be solved to have the impact and move the DoD forward. But it's a huge pain point that needs to be solved just in general on both government and industry side. If you look at oral presentations and the fallacy of things like key personnel, right? Swapping key personnel out once you get the contract, like, that's a whole thing. And that's part of industry. So how do we build this trust between both parties to actually find the right talent and the right problem sets to solve or to get them to focus on?
So what do you think about OTAs are they a Band-Aid, or are they a solution, or are they a workaround?
No, they're great, right? Part of my strategy at Defense Unicorns is kind of have to meet the program office where they want to be met at, right? OTAs are great. OTAs have existed, right? Some people love OTAs. Some people know how to do OTAs. Other people are going to be like, no, I want to use GSA, right? Or I'm more comfortable with something else. So like, while something exists, what often happens is an acquisition strategy that is, in my opinion, one of two things. What they're comfortable with, right? What they've done before, they want to keep doing, or they're being told to be innovative, right? It's usually one of those two things that is pushing the acquisition strategy. So how do you potentially get that organization their innovative win by, looking at OTAs or getting on potentially trade wins or something that is like new and upcoming, and also find vehicles and strategies that you can be on that are going to go to the people that are comfortable with things like GSA and schedules, and that's just how they traditionally operate. Yep, I think they're both great. You gotta figure out how to do both.
So let's go, if we can. I love one thing about Defense Unicorns that I love is that it open sources its what is it called? It's their community. Brian, what is it called? I can't remember.
Oh, the culture statement.
Your culture statement. Yeah. What are your thoughts on that? I know it has a number of commits, and you all kind of allow input into the culture statement based from your members. I think that's awesome. What are your thoughts on that and Defense Unicorn culture in general?
I think we probably have the best culture out there. That's my personal opinion. We've truly built a community of like-minded people that want to all solve and focus on the same problems. So how do I feel about that? I would expect nothing less from the company, that we not only believe in open source just fundamentally, but that's how we treat our culture internally as well. And just culture in general, like, one of the drivers of me being here, I didn't share this, but I have two young girls, a almost 3 and almost 2-year-old. And what really drew me here to Defense Unicorns, it was the first place that I felt that I could not wait to have a career because I have kids, and not wait to have kids because I have a career. And this is truly the one place that I truly feel that I can pursue both. Maybe exhausted, but like, I'm both. I can be the mom that I want to be, and I can have the career that I want. And you don't find that everywhere.
It's really interesting. Awesome. So what are the things that help you find that balance?
I will remember it, like, week 1, I had so balance between like my kids and work.
Kids, career, work, everything else. Like, what makes Defense Unicorns like the way that they run? Like, how does it help you find that balance, I guess?
Yeah, I will remember, like, week 1 at Defense Unicorns is doing onboarding, or I had some type of meeting, and my toddler ran in screaming and just crawled on my lap. And I was so embarrassed because, like, this is my first week, and like, I'm super excited to be here, and I'm like super nervous that now my kid is crawling all over me, and no one batted an eye. No one, like, instead people are like, oh, let me show you my kid that's actually sitting in the background. And it was just so welcoming and understanding, like, this is your life, right? We believe in you as a person, and as part of you, like, you bring your life to this company as well. So I get to balance that, because, like, now my coworkers know my kids recognize my coworkers. If I need to step away and take care of a tantrum or go to a doctor's appointment, I feel very able to do so, and that I'm not having to pick one or the other, right? And with that, like if I need to catch up late at night when the kids are asleep, there's no issue there. Like I can balance my life with work. Like I said, sometimes it's a little tiring, but like there's never a time where I don't feel like I can't make it work.
I think that's a leadership aspect, right? Or that's based on leadership. When I was running a team in my old job, at first, I think when we all started remote, when a kid would come in, we would all get like frazzled, right? Like we'd be like, "Oh my god!" But then I learned you just talk to them, right? It's just part of the situation, and then once that trickles down to the rest of your either employees or the rest of your company, everybody understands and can move forward, and it can be a nice thing rather than yeah. I like that. That's very good. Yeah. So with that leadership, can we talk about Defense Unicorn leadership? I mean, it must be just an amazing leadership team that runs Defense Unicorns, given its culture, given its methodologies. I have to assume that you have high regard for them. Can you talk a little bit more about that?
Oh, I have a high regard for just about everyone at Defense Unicorns. So let me just say that blanket statement. I will share a funny story, putting our CEO on blast. I've told the story a bunch in front of him, so I'm proved to do so. I was at Hanscom Air Force Base, and I was watching Kessel run from the sidelines, kind of build from the ground up, and I loved the excitement, and I loved watching like fellow captains and like people in my generation, right, actually making such an impact, and it was exciting to see. And then I heard of things like Space Camp, and I started hearing of all these little organizations that popped up. And I looked at where we're at Hanscom. I was like, we have this great Boston ecosystem. Like, this is phenomenal. There's so many like fantastic companies and talent out there. Like, how do we connect into that? Because at the time, I felt like Hanscom was on its own island. And I was like, we have these problems that these people could solve. How do we bridge that gap there? And I heard of Space Camp, and I was like, how do I bring what Space Camp is doing here? So I had messaged this Rob Slaughter. I was like, hey, I would love to learn more because I want to figure out how to bring this model to Hanscom. Ignored me. Totally ignored me. He pawned me off to someone else because he just didn't have some time for some random captain, which I'll never let him forget. And I ended up talking to this girl, and I was like, please, I just wanted to talk to someone. I want some help with some ideas. Like, how do you get started? And she ended up saying like, hey, just give her a chance, right? Just take a chance. And I finally met him in person at at the time it was Air Force Pitch Day. It was that big Air Force pitch event. And I had this little spreadsheet or this little paper of this picture that I was trying to draw and talk him through it. And then I couldn't get him to leave me alone, right? And that's how I got pulled to death. And the reason I share that story is because he took a chance on me then, and the Defense Unicorns continues to take a chance on me in terms of building me into the leader I want to be and the career that I want to have. So I'm super fortunate for the company because it's a bunch of folks that we all believe in each other that are willing to take chances on each other for personal and professional growth. It all started with that story, and it all goes back to how do we continue to find the right people that we can take a chance on because we believe in the impact that they can have.
So piggybacking off of that a little bit, where's Defense Unicorns headed? What's the next 3-5 years? Where's your vision for the company, and where are you on that journey?
Well, man, that's a great question. Where are we on that journey? We are building all the foundation for scale and impact, right? We've very much been growing organically, which has been phenomenal. Everything has been just based on our credibility and our current performance and efforts, and we've been super grateful for where we're at today. Now we're actually investing in growth specifically. Like, how do we bring folks in with specific domain expertise that can translate what we do to like the Navy or the Army? And I say that because like with an Air Force background, I have no business being in a Navy conversation or an Army conversation. They have a whole different language. Your acronyms are made up. They still have like a real word, you know? So how do we bring more of that domain expertise and scale what we're doing beyond just the current engagements that we have? So, you know, what is our goal? Our goal is to have Defense Unicorns as just like the standard tech baseline across the DoD, right? I know that is a lofty goal, but that's what we believe in, and that's what we want to get to. So currently building the foundation and building our team up so we can have that type of scale and just become the next household name of technology that people want to use.
Building and scaling is quite a challenge here. Foundation, critically important. Can you dive a little bit into what building that foundation looks like and some of the specific things maybe you all are working on to prepare for scaling?
Yep, you're running a marathon while painting your house and cleaning the dishes. You're like doing everything, but you can't slow down. Now, scaling has been great, and I say that lightly. There are obviously growing pains with everything. You want to put processes and templates and everything in place, but you don't have necessarily the time that you want. And I also say that because everything that we do is to support the national security mission set. So DoD, IC, you're talking about government funding or funding timelines. So if we want to have an impact this fiscal year, like the time is now. The time to have those conversations is now. Because by the time something actually gets on contract, if you're not already talking to someone in this time frame, like you're going to miss out on so many opportunities. So all that being said, we're looking at the current timeline. So that's why I said like we're running and building at the same time. We're learning as we go. And that's why the people that we bring on, like we truly believe they're unicorns because they're helping us kind of navigate all of this. Like not only do you get to be a part of this team, you get to help build this team. So that's what it feels. It feels hectic, but everyone's super excited. So there's like a lot of excitement and figuring things out and just that flexibility of what you get with that startup environment.
Taking a brief pause here on the Researching Greatness podcast to allow our guests to hit the like and subscribe button if you like the conversation that's going on today. Also hosting Defense Unicorns here, so feel free to check them out. Great company. Sounds like they're doing some awesome things. I'm going to turn it back over to Joe to continue the conversation with Victoria. Joe.
Yeah, so Victoria, I've encountered and kind of talked with a number of people in defense contracting about the structure of an organization, hierarchy of an organization, whether you divide up, the engineers into a group, or whether you have smaller teams that are entirely, cohesive and contain their own hierarchy and or control their own people. And my question to you is, Defense Unicorns, how is it structured, and what have you found scales best as far as that organizational structure?
Yes, we follow the entrepreneurial operating system, so EOS business model, the flywheel, right? So we have product delivery growth. So our whole goal is how do we spin the flywheel, and that is really everything that we've structured against. So I'm on the growth side. Our hope is that to build tension between that flywheel, because that's the only way that you're going to be able to spin it quickly. And that has honestly been super effective for us, right? And then ensuring that individuals in that flywheel have that trust built across, because you need someone on the growth side to push product and say like, hey, love your roadmap. No one cares about it. They want this feature instead.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or on the delivery side. Go ahead.
We're all friends here, but yeah.
Get rid of your roadmap, I think.
Yeah.
Or on the delivery side where you want to leverage adoption of product in the delivery environments as well. But our delivery engineers are only going to want to use good product, right? So building that, and then obviously finding new opportunities to spin over to the delivery side that they can support. So it's the whole flywheel motion, and that's honestly why we've been able to scale to the level that we're at right now.
That's awesome. And I'm going to plug there real quick. Huge advocate of EOS. Going to put in 2 book recommendations for our listeners here on the EOS side. E-Myth, or E-Myth Revisited, which is sort of the origins of EOS. And then Traction, if our listeners haven't checked out either of those books by Michael Gerber, Gino Wickham. They're really the foundation for EOS, something that a lot of commercial companies, even some in government, are working through implementing.
So along those lines, I'd be really interested in your thoughts on, okay, you were in the military for 10 years. And if I remember correctly, this is your first industry job.
Mm-hmm.
So you've come in and you're talking about EOS, like what was the biggest culture shock, or are there things that you wish you could bring over from your military side of just like how you run companies or how you run the teams or anything like that?
Biggest culture shock. I didn't have to ask 10 other people permission to do my job, right? And the expectation was you were hired to do a job, do it. And I know that sounds crazy, but I think there's a culture within the DoD, and I saw this specifically with the communities that I came from, where you do a job, but in order to do it, you're going to go ask your boss and your boss's boss, and then you're going to brief someone else's boss. And then as long as they buy off on it, you're good. So there's that almost lack of accountability and ownership in a way, right? You're not really owning these decisions. You're owning the decisions if everyone else agrees with them. And that is a huge transition when you come to industry and you're now in a role where like, nope, like you own the decision. Like, what are we doing? You don't have to brief everyone. It's it's a different shift, and it's refreshing. And I think people get excited about doing their job when they have that sense of ownership. So yeah, that was probably the biggest culture shock for me, transitioning from that DoD government environment to industry.
Yeah, it's almost like nobody wants to take accountability, and so they just shift it up, which is, I think, one of the biggest problems in the military is that lack of accountability. Which, yeah, what do you think? I don't. Let me pause here. I don't know whether any of this is going to go into the podcast, but
No.
what are your thoughts? Because this is completely
as
separate.
long as you get rid of that EOS stuff that I was
That's
like,
fine,
I'm not
it's gone.
All right, it's all in.
I'll go back and talk EOS in some more detail.
I think I would like to learn more about EOS. I know nothing about it, so now I'm going to have to read the books that John recommended.
I was going to say, like, I had the binder right here, but it's downstairs now. So
oh, nice. But yeah, how is that going to change in the military? I just find it so frustrating that and the lack of ability of those top leaders and everyone in between to take risks is just crippling the military.
And it's why we lose.
Yes.
Man,
no, I still say we too. It's why it's why we lose people. Yeah. It's why we lose great talent. Yeah.
We lose great talent because we're not providing the opportunities for people to advance, like professionally and personally. And part of that is allowing that level of ownership and accountability. People want to be held accountable for what they're doing, right? I think that's just natural instinct. Like I do something, you're telling me to do something. There needs to be that sense of accountability. Yeah, I don't know how the DoD will fix it. I think it's just a very, very like many years that have built up.
Yes.
Positions and policies, and now that there's jobs that you're talking about that bring no value. But it was my biggest pain point when I was in acquisitions, because I was like, here's my job. Like you told me this is my job. I have to go ask all these people permission to do my job. What value am I getting out of all of these processes? Right? I am all for briefing and sharing information if you want to be aware of something, but to put me through these processes for approval's sake, like I'm not getting any value or feedback to do my job better, right? All I'm doing is wasting 2 weeks of time trying to route something that doesn't change anything, right? So that was always a frustration. What value are you actually bringing? Which a lot of people don't want to hear when they're the ones that are supposed to be reviewing something.
Yeah.
But that's how I feel.
Yeah. No. I remember in one organization, we had a review board that was the most arduous thing to prepare for, never made a decision. And we just, it would take weeks for us to get through the review board, but then it didn't do anything. So like we were just taken off project for weeks just to get through this review board that never made a decision. Yeah, it's very frustrating. I would say that one of the things that breeds that is nobody gives bad fit reps, and everybody's afraid to put a bad word or fit whatever it is. And what's a fit rep in the Air Force? I don't even know. But what is it? Evaluations or
EPRs, yeah.
Yeah. So everybody's afraid to put a bad word in there, and nobody takes accountability for failed projects. And when they do, your career is tanked. But that's not what should happen when you fail a project.
Right.
So yeah, it's a frustrating thing. But
well,
anyway,
you look at just part of the problem is that sometimes we have to fail before anything changes, right? And that's like, how do you prevent that, right? Why do we have to continue to fail before we actually see a change or a difference? Right? How do we get ahead of that? And that's where you see things like Kessel Run. Kessel Run came out of an actual program failing, right?
Yeah,
how do we not make that the norm for any type of change? And how do we actually do things better because we know they're better versus waiting for something to completely implode before we're like, yeah, you know what? We should probably do something about this. You know?
Or learn to embrace failure, right? Fail fast, right? Make it so that when you fail, it's not catastrophic and you've lost, every American a quarter or something.
Yeah.
I was listening to this. If anybody listens to Kara Swisher, but she was talking about like failing fast and breaking things being the motto, but like that's not actually great, right? So you should really fail fast and like not break things. So
the goal should not be break things,
right?
Yeah,
right. Yeah.
Well,
if you do break things, you should have lessons learned from them that you can implement
and fallbacks,
and improve
right?
on.
Don't break prod.
Yeah.
I
think people say like fail fast, but there's more to it than just fail fast. Like you have to improve from those failures, and then you have to pick yourself up and keep going down whatever journey you were on. And it's not just like we want to reward failure and we want you to just fail forever. Right. Like you still have to accomplish the end objective. And the fail fast mantra, it's really important, but there's a lot of nuances there that I think people forget about when they go there and just say, oh, just go fail fast. And it's like, yeah, if only that was
it's true. You have to understand the big picture. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and the fact that there's, this whole risk averseness or, concern about failing in the DoD, it's not new. People talk about it all the time, right? And because that exists, that's why you see things like taking 18 plus months for an acquisition strategy, because we're so hyper focused on how do we build something that's perfect that we're already behind the game, right? And then we know it's not going to be perfect, but we pretend it is anyways. And then by the time we get something like actually on contract or up and running, we're so afraid to walk away from it and call it a failure because of the amount of time that it took us to get to this point. So if to your point, like if we can do this faster and be willing to walk away from things that just aren't working, because we know that we can try again faster, like then that's great. But we haven't been able to break that mold. Because the other thing is like you see organizations that are able to do things quickly, but are they able to do things quickly, sustainably, right? Everyone can do all hands on deck. Let's get this through quickly. But can you do that as your norm, right? I don't care how fast you do one, contract award. I want to know, is that your norm, right? Do you, on average, do this consistently? Because you can speed up timelines, you can speed up processes, you can speed up reviews, but it's not going to be sustainable unless you actually fix the root of the problem, which is actually how you do it, right?
And so I think being in growth and doing business development, it's also, you got to have enough lines of effort going on at the same time that if you lose one bid, you have 5-10 others in the pipeline. You have other things that you're working on that you haven't gone all in on something that may fail and completely destroy your company, but you've made enough bets, you've taken enough risk across a wide enough set of projects that you fail on one, the second one, the third one, the fourth one, the sixth one, you actually win and you continue on, but you haven't gone all in on one thing that may be the death of the company or the death of whatever your effort is.
We, so at Defense Unicorns, we refer to that business development side. We try to be very diligent in the terms that we use, and we refer to as like opportunities, right? Because that's how we treat it. These are opportunities for us, right? But it's not for the weak, right? I was not expecting how hard it is when you're like, hey, I'm Victoria from Defense Unicorns. I'd love to just chat. And then you're left on red, like story all the time. So like this whole environment is not for the weak. But you're right? Like it's, how do you have enough shots on goals? How do you have enough conversations to get that validation that what you're doing is what we want to continue doing? What I love about what we do in our model is we're not trying to sell anything. Like we really try to engage and make sure that we continue to have an understanding of the problems that people are struggling with. We've actually walked away from work because we're like, you know what? We're actually not the right partner for you at all. So we don't take on work for work's sake. We want to ensure that we believe we are the right person to actually solve the problem that you have at hand. And which is why we also lead with things like discovery and framings, right? We don't want to propose some solution that we think is going to solve this problem. Like we actually want to spend dedicated time understanding your problem space. Let's talk about it. And maybe through talking about it, you understand like, hey, what I originally thought was my problem actually isn't. I need to focus on something else. So how do we build that credibility and have that conversation without being like sales first type of thing? So we're
Mhm.
deliberate about it, but just wanted to share that with you guys.
Cool. Well, I hope you all have been enjoying the conversation we've been having with Victoria from Defense Unicorns. Excited to have her on the show. Victoria, as we close out the podcast here, any points of wisdom, parting thoughts you want to share with the audience?
Sure. Words of wisdom. It takes one person to give you a chance, right? And that chance can make a difference. I speak from that personally, right? It took one person taking a chance on me to get me to where I'm at today. Same thing on the government side. You could get 1,000 no's. All it takes is one person that believes in what you're doing to give you a chance to really change and make a difference for either you personally or your company or business professionally. So don't give up, I guess, as corny as that sounds, but find that one person that's going to give you a chance.
Well, Victoria, thank you for your time today. For our listeners, please hit the like and subscribe button. And if you're interested in being on a future episode, feel free to reach out to us at researchinggreatness@gmail.com. And we wish you all a wonderful rest of your day. Thank you.